Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I get started, I want to introduce everybody to my most popular person in the world right now, our new planner, Mr. Jeff Wilson. He starts on Thursday, but he was able to come to the meeting tonight, which is outstanding because I think it will provide a good foundation for you. And this is something rare for us. It's a joint session. We don't do these very often. But the council members around there and after the meeting, I'll do some personal introductions for everybody. But this is Mr. Wilson. This is our welcome award. And his official welcome will be at your next meeting with the band and everything else. So, as the mayor mentioned, Mr. Tom Messmer from IRG is, I assume, on his way. He confirmed on Friday, so I can only assume there's traffic or some sort of transportation issues. I expect him to be here. He's a prospective buyer of the area around the home course. It formerly had a developer agreement and a preliminary plat approval, which just got extended. So I wanted to set the background for everybody, and as they show up, I'll tell you the way it is. In front of you, oh, outstanding. Mr. Messmer, how are you? Come on up. Get a chair up. If you have a file or something, so quick background, especially since we have so many people watching tonight. The area was originally under a developer agreement, which called for some warehouses, office building, commercial, that kind of stuff. And that expired in 2015. The preliminary plat approval was set to expire just a few days ago. And the owner, California Teachers Pension Fund, as an investment, asked for an extension. And an extension was granted with the condition that all the previous conditions be met. The important key there is there has to be a developer's agreement in place. There is not one. So that extension is good one time only for 1 year. It cannot ever be extended again. So pragmatically speaking, getting a developer's agreement in place before the year is probably on the outside of anything that's possible. So really, for all intents and purposes, this site no longer has a way to move forward, I would say. But you also know from our comp plan update that we have a very rigorous sub-area planning process coming. Mr. Wilson's presence is kind of the kickoff for that. And what we're going to do is, the easiest way to think about this is think of a small or mini comp plan update process. We're going to have the public outreach that we had before. The public's going to participate, and we are going to plan the area around the home course, just as if it had never been done. So that's a very formal process that the state recognizes, and is probably, and if Mr. Wilson wants to comment, he's welcome to do so. It's probably the best way to keep from running afoul from the state and all the laws around these and everything else. So we're very excited, and we really hope to have that done by the end of the year. Once the rezoning is done, the sub-area plan is complete, then the zoning will be set, and anyone who wants to come purchase, Mr. Messmer, for example, would then work a developer agreement in the confines and within the boundaries of the zoning. So that's where we're at today. As you see the map and as you see the ordinance in front of you, those are the types of uses that are permitted as we speak today. But I wanted to warn you that we're doing the sub-area plan, and things may not be the same in 6 months as they are today. So Mr. Messmer had talked with the mayor and I. Obviously, anyone who's wanted to purchase something this big wants a little bit of surety. And we said, hey, can't really provide that. We have a sub-area plan coming, and we don't know how it's going to turn out. It's a public process. So he asked if he can come talk with you and the planning commission, and he wants to share visions for the property. And I'll let him take over from here. But he's here tonight to talk with you and hear from you on how you see this area going forward, and he's going to be able to assimilate this into his business plans and make his decisions as best informed as possible. That sound about right?
Yes, thank you.
Great. Mr. Messmer. Thank you for coming.
Thanks very much. And I have with me is Justin Lecter here. Justin works with us, is primarily involved in our environmental issues, but I'll embarrass him, he's a really great business guy too. And is my right hand on the property that we just purchased up in Federal Way, the Weyerhaeuser campus. So we're not residents of the area, but it feels like it 2 or 3 days a week. So you got a beautiful piece of property here. Justin is far more familiar with the restrictions and covenants on the property than I am. And so there's kind of two pieces here. One is, what you can and can't do based on the restrictions and the covenants on the property. And then what you can do, it's the what you probably should and you shouldn't do because it's what the market will bear. So, so by way of introduction of the company, Industrial Realty Group has about 125 million square feet of real estate that we own and manage around the country in about 26 states. We are the largest privately held real estate investment trust in the country, and we are the largest adaptive reuse developer, which means that our typical purchase is a 2 or 3 million square foot industrial property that, say, General Motors shuts down, all the jobs go away, we come in, and while most buyers pass on that because they can't find a 2 or 3 million square foot single user, we come in and find a way to make 7 or 8 different users work on one property. And that often means, reconfiguring the property, more loading docks, more entry, more office, different restrooms, whatever. And we're able to bring the properties back to life. So that's sort of the short story about 125 million square feet of real estate. But our most recent purchase was the Weyerhaeuser corporate campus. Just before that, we similarly purchased Pfizer's corporate campus in downstate New York. Same type of thing, a couple million square feet of buildings. Pfizer stated some of them were repurposing the other buildings and then develop some new buildings on some vacant land to bring back more jobs and more commerce to that Pearl River area. So I brought some, and these are, we can just sort of lay these out if you want to just lay these on the table in front of you. These are the current plan that exists. I brought 3 copies. I wanted this to be, if it could be, it's a great piece of land, but you folks have been looking at it for a lot longer than us. And I know that you must have some, and just take one of those and move them down. Yeah, the current plan, which you characterize, the best we could characterize it as is it's an interesting plan, but as you say, everything's sort of expired, and it's time to rethink it, and it's also, 8 or 10 years after, it was an interesting plan. We're interested in purchasing and developing the land, and we have a vision of what we believe can work there, but you've been thinking about this a lot longer than we have, so I'm curious, what you think about this land and what you think will work here in this community, where you'd like to see this go. And if we, happen to come to some intersection of sets here that your vision and ours, then we'd love to work together to try to pull that off. Is there anybody that, you've lived in this community a lot longer than us, you've been looking at this beautiful piece of land, what are your thoughts?
For a reason to get quiet now, I can see that.
Yeah, but I bet they've all planned this thing out really well,
Yeah,
so I'm anxious to hear.
It'll start to get warmed up here, just be careful what you ask for. I think one of the things we've been having an ongoing discussion is that there's probably not one single use
Right.
that you want to look at for this piece of property, that's a variety of uses. One, obviously from your interest, you need something that's going to generate revenue, something that's going to be profitable. We're looking for something that enhances our community. The intersection, as you talked about it, is where we find something that you can develop that works for you, that also meets our community goals, long-term objectives. The phase, DuPont is at a phase where economic development is where we're at now. We have basically built out the vast majority of the residential property. We're now sitting on what property is still available as commercial property by and large. And quite honestly, the economic engine of the city needs some more activity. And so, ideally, we're going to find some place that comes together with that. You and I have had a lot of discussion on this already, so I invite the Planning Commission and the Council to start to put their thoughts in. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm Councilman Gorski. Yeah, we've looked at this for a while, and we've had a couple agreements and it's been sitting vacant. And we've had other people come in with great plans and it's just sat vacant. So it's not our first rodeo. And that said, I'm not anxious to develop it unless it's the right development. And I'm fine with it being scrub land because this is really our last opportunity in this town to get that right. So I think we're really conscious of that, or we should be. And looking at any plan, we're going to have an idea of what goes in there. And from a city standpoint, a developer standpoint, that we're making the right decision on behalf of citizens on whether or not we have the right infrastructure and city collateral that is going to back that up, that is not going to strain our fire, our police, and that sort of thing, our emergency services. So we have to be cognizant of what impacts are coming by developing it. And I know that there's, the short-term aspect where we go, we develop, and we reap the benefits of tax dollars and the REIT. But the other aspect is what are we left with once the developer picks up sticks and goes back to their next development. So that's going to be forefront in my mind, because any of the development has to make sense with what the vision is and the plans that we already have in place and what we just discussed about how we see that in the future. But so I think that's, great, but how it's developed and what sequence it's developed, I would, not want to see a hopscotch of buildings here and there, and then the economy bottoms out again, and we're left for 15 years looking at 10 buildings instead of 40 buildings. You know what I mean? So, and then they're all scattered around. We have plats and signs that say, buildable, too sweet, kind of thing. So that's where I'm at. And like I said, and I'm comfortable with not developing it if it's the wrong development for the city. And I think we all have to bear in mind what that means and have that discussion and taking the inputs of what we said. It's a valuable piece of land because it's it's pristine and unbuilt upon. We have a championship golf course there, and we have currently for a lot of people a view of the sound. So that's going to take a lot of consideration on our part. So I'm going to be a lot more interested once I see actually concrete ideas come rather than conceptual ideas. Because we've had conceptual ideas for the last 8 years in this town, that is. And I'll be honest, we have people who have a hard time visioning what, the city was going to look like when we're building houses because we're just releasing and growing so quickly that, we would put up a building and people would contact us and say, what happened to all those trees? So how we go forward is going to be very critical for us as a city. And so I'm just going to caution everyone that, we have a plan, but it's, it's still at a very, very beginning stage. And once we see actual ideas come to fruition, then I'm more interested. We've had other people give us conceptual ideas before. And just for the record, I worked at one of those General Motors factories that I got all people.
So just to be clear, what I passed around here is not our idea of a plan. This is the plan that was adopted however many years ago. We don't believe that's a good plan. We're looking at this as a blank piece of land. So what I'm really here to ask is I'm agreeing with you that I think, personal opinion, that's not the best plan. That's not the one anybody wants to build. If it's a blank slate, I'm asking what you think ought to be on that blank slate. And like the mayor said, it's a mix of things. It's not one thing. So I got a real good idea what I don't want. I'm just curious what you do want. Because if we go through this process and we go through a development agreement, we're going to spend a lot of time together and I want to make sure we're all swimming in basically the same direction. So that, and I don't want to, that's why we didn't bring you anything. I don't want to bring you something and say this is our vision. I could do that. I mean, we do have a vision of what maybe this could be, but I don't want that to be cross-current to what you folks want it to be. So I appreciate your thoughts on that.
Right, and I would say that's a great point, but what we have a lot in this town is housing. And there's a benefit for that, but what we don't have a lot of is mixed use and other types of industry that isn't warehouse base. Certainly we don't want to look at more warehouses in town. But we would like to see businesses flourish here, but, you know, we're struggling with what we have. So, but that doesn't mean that that original plan that we have here is unworkable. So it may be a combination of many of those different things and new ideas brought forward. But my point being is that I think something that would generate revenue into the city would be great. And I would say revenue in a sense that we could have something just beyond what we already have now that generates our revenue. And so it would be nice to have a business park, a proper business park. And I would like to see that case made as well as whatever other cases are made. Because I think that we still have to understand, like I mentioned before, anytime we're going to bring in something, we have to understand what impact it has on our infrastructure, on how many police, fire, and emergency responders we have, and how we maintain our roads and what happens to the impact of that. So a lot of consideration, and I think that we look and redo the plan, or entertain the idea of doing the plan. We're looking at a total picture, and for where I'm sitting right now, it's going to be a mix of something that already exists and maybe something new. But I can't seem to be supplanted with a completely new idea in its entirety.
Button up there, yeah.
So I just have a question. I know we do have a consent decree that says no houses are to be built on here, no schools. But I do wonder, when you look at Point Ruston, and it was the most toxic Superfund site in the United States, one of them, could it be feasible to go back and look at that decree, consent decree, and look at maybe ways of adding retail on the bottom? I know we have that now and it's not very successful, but that's a beautiful piece of property. And you could have nice houses above it, maybe a grocery store, maybe something like that around that property. I would have to think it would be very attractive for people if they could live 1, 2, 3 stories above an area overlooking the sound, because it's one of the last places that I'm aware of that you can build and still overlook the sound.
Yeah, we've been talking about that idea for a while. And some preliminary discussions with the Department of Ecology. It's been 20 years since that consent decree was put in. And we saw what just took place out at the intersection of DuPont Silicon Road and Center Drive. It took that developer a year to mitigate that soil for other than residential, commercial, warehouse, whatever's going to end up being there, but it's not been mitigated to the point where it's suitable for residential. Would it be possible? I think Point Ruston is a good case that anything's possible. Question is it practical? In my mind, I see space in here for some housing, and maybe not even the stacked housing off retail, but if we're going to put housing out here with not just views of the sound, views of the Olympic Mountains, views of Mount Rainier, sitting along a championship golf course, then that's pretty serious housing. And so, you know, I didn't know how Tom's plans play into that. From a municipal standpoint, there's a couple factors. Well, there's really 3 factors. There's the ecological factor. Can we overcome the consent decree if that was a direction we wanted to go? Certainly, I don't think there's any feasible way for the entire thing to become housing. I think that's a huge, huge bridge. Secondly, you know, we're subject to the Growth Management Act as run by the state, and we are not at the phase where the state is looking for us to add 6,000 more residents to the city of DuPont. That's not where we're at in that piece yet. So we have some bounding by that. And then quite honestly, from a third standpoint, what the city needs, and I think Councilmember Gorsuch touched that well, is we need things that generate jobs. We need things that generate revenues. There's things we don't have. God forbid somebody wanted to put a grocery store in the city of DuPont, a big one. That could be declared emperor or something for that. But so multi-use, what does multi-use mean? Does that mean some residential? Very much could be. Does that mean some commercial, manufacturing? Might it be some more warehouses? Retail? I think there's room in this for all of it. We also have, and Andy, I'm surprised you haven't jumped on this yet. We've got, the whole Bluffs area. We have some very pristine, beautiful trails along the bluff. Down at the far corner, we've got the Wilkes Observatory. Those are environmental and cultural elements that need to be integrated and preserved. And Tom, we've had that discussion. You're aware of that. Those are pieces that are going to be very important to us as a community. We have an interest in not having 16-story neon skyscrapers sitting in the middle of town. So, we're sensitive as you drive around DuPont, how it looks right now. We might be considered a selfish community because we want benefit, but we don't want to destroy what we already have. And so that's going to be a balance that if you pursue this, and I certainly understand that where you're sitting right now, this is a risk because you don't know what all of us are going to settle on in 6 to 12 months from now as that sub-area plan comes to life and really shapes it. So I appreciate that'd be a lot of money to write a check for, not knowing if the answer is scrub land and some small development wouldn't be a very economical thing to do. But keeping those models in mind, what our limitations are, what our needs as a community. Obviously, we push demands on any of the city services, and it's not just emergency services. What happens to our transportation infrastructure as this comes together? How does that tie into the rest of it? Depending on what type of commercial activity goes in, it either generates enormous amounts of more traffic or a livable amount of traffic. So those are the balances we have to walk through.
I'll go next.
I knew I could prompt you.
Thanks for coming by today. So far as Beth, your comments, if it's something that isn't in the plan, I'm open to that. If it can be done, and that's something definitely we consider. Let me just share a couple of things that were on my mind as this discussion was coming about. So, of paramount importance is the residences and the citizens that are already living here. It's going to be a big impact to those that live on Hoffman Hill and certainly parts of Yale that actually look down across the golf course and the area that we get to be developed. And certainly for the golf course, there's going to be significant changes to what they're seeing out there on the greens. And so I think it's very important that we keep in mind the reason why people move here. And I think any kind of development, whether yours or anywhere else, we should carry that as paramount because people came here for a small town feel, the walkability, the sound, the location, sort of an island feeling, and that it would be nice to maintain that. Some sort of campus-like setting, as it talks about in the code as the business park area, I think that's appropriate. I do have some recommendations that I would provide to you in that. From what I've been able to find, there isn't anything in there that talks about open spaces and parks as unique. When it was being developed for residential, there's requirements based on how many residences and what the ratio is for open space and parks. There's nothing in there that dictates that. But I would say, in keeping with that theme of an open space, that would be continued. And I think it fits into the business park where conceivably employees, perhaps over lunch, would be able to retreat to a place where they can escape the busyness of whatever they're doing and find some solace, perhaps on the city-owned property that are sort of surrounded by the proposed purchase area. But, it would be good both to have parks and also trails. Obviously, the Parks Master Plan provides a lot of information about that. I'm not necessarily fixed on those final locations, but we do need to provide interconnectivity throughout the area. And it's something that people should want to walk on. would steer away from having to go locating the streets, although that may happen. The historical areas are important, obviously, the 1833 site, the Wilkes Observatory, certainly the Bluff Trail from the Neal, and the Switchback Trail that I'm not sure where the property boundary lies, but that provides connectivity down to Sequatchie Creek, up the bluff, and across what I believe is the corner of that property. So maintaining that is important to me. Like the mayor mentioned, keeping Sequatchie Creek whole in its ability to provide a quiet space away from the built-up area. And so I'm very interested in making sure that any kind of light pollution or noise pollution is back away from that, so that when walkers go down Sequatchie Creek, they're fully immersed in the natural environment, not in any kind of legal from future developments, be it on the south or the north side. I think traffic flow is something that is going to be a really hard thing to figure out, especially with the original plan had that traffic going right past the middle school and Wren Road. So how that gets figured out is something that I think we're going to need to figure out, because I'm not sure that that's the best solution. Potentially enlarging the road that goes in front of the middle school, hanging right, going past those residences and into the area. So I'd like to really look at that hard. We've had, been working through some challenges with the Amazon development, and that's a much larger road. Center Drive is a larger road than Wren Road certainly is, and that section of Ross Hollow. So that's a concern to me. Besides that, I think the bluff is significant. And the reason it's significant, and the reason I'm not a real fan of this proposal, at least as it goes down towards the south, is because even from a Puget Sound view standpoint, and from the Nisqually Bird Reserve standpoint, there should be some setbacks there. If you walk the boardwalk all the way out to the end, and you squint just right on your tippy toes, you can see some things. Obviously, with buildings there, there's going to have to be something, muted colors perhaps, or something that's done to preserve that view. Because really, in Nisqually, they have very good setbacks to look at that. The other thing is that I think that anything along the bluff needs to be accessible to all public. And so I'd really like to see some sort of boulevard, not a double-loaded road, but something similar to what's over at Chambers Creek, where there's a walkable trail, either the existing one or something further back. That certainly allows people to maybe gain access to some of the corporate open spaces, or just keeps the traffic back from the Puget Sound, the view corridors are intact, and accessibility all along the block is maintained for citizens.
I think directionally we agree with all of that.
Great.
The exercise that we're wrestling with is, and what I really want to come away with, and development agreement wants to come away with is this, to do this, whether it's this plan or some iteration of this plan, is nominally $20 million in infrastructure, roads, utilities, what have you, to do some loop that looks like this, that creates lots that are developable. So you take the $20 million in infrastructure, you add it at the purchase price of land, we need to come up with something that if we wanted to do this, and I appreciate your comment of I'm fine with it being what it is. I mean, I was up there and I think it's beautiful values too. So, I mean, maybe there's not a development solution here, and I'm fine with that because we don't own it yet. I feel a lot differently. We already plopped down X millions of dollars to buy it, but somebody else did that. But I mean, if we were to buy this, we would be in for $20 million plus the purchase price, and we would want to only do that if we saw, revenue generating opportunities that could surpass the $20 million plus purchase price that's on the table. And I'm sure that's what the developers that came up with this plan wanted to do. So all of the stuff you're talking about with the view and I mean, we walked it. I mean, actually, Justin and I were out there. We walked the entire thing. I've been up there a couple times. I walked on the golf course with the golf course folks. It's beautiful. Without any of the restrictions, you put homes, beautiful homes around the golf course. I live on a golf course. It looks just like this. And in California, I love that my home looks on all of that grass because I could never afford to own all of that grass. So I get all that. And what I'm really struggling with is what are the things that we would put on there that would be worth $20 million plus the purchase price kind of investment, or maybe we default to it looks great the way it is and we're happy with that. I'm weighing that, so I'm trying to figure out what you folks would be comfortable with that would be worth anybody spending, pick a number, $30 million to get in the game.
I'm not going to tell you what the business end of it is, certainly. Although I know that what I'm here to do is to preserve what the people who have already moved here for, keep that whole. And so those are some of the things that I mentioned to you. What you put on there is, in my opinion, entirely up to you. If it can work in the workplace, certainly. And I'd be open to hearing anything like Beth recommended or whatever is allowable within the law. So that's something that we need to consider, because I think everyone sitting around this table knows that, it's going to get developed one day, whether it's sliced into pieces or however that is going to happen. And surely there's a certain amount of infrastructure that needs to be able to, but I think that's just the cost of doing business. What we can do is provide the conduit by which we sort of enable you to accomplish, what your plans are. So that's how I feel sitting around this table. So I'm not going to say that it should be more of one or more of the other, although I do think that there is potential for certainly some high-end office and research and corporate area office space that can bring some professionals into the area. Because certainly living and working in the same community has value. That's what I do, and I appreciate a short commute.
Okay, Councilmember Gorski, he's made this point several times before, and I absolutely agree with him. This is our last bite at the apple. And what you're really dealing with now is this city was developed by a developer, and most people that were here were along for the ride. You didn't have civic capacity, and I think we look back at some of it now and say, we wish we'd done some of that differently. And we're quite honestly, we're embroiled in fixing some things now that were done poorly 20 years ago. And so if you detect a little bit of sensitivity to us, as you said, you walk the property, you see what it looks like, you see the views that are there. It's also in the heart of our city. And so we have an opportunity to do something really special here. I hope that it's something that is of such an economic viability that it's worth your effort to do it, and it's worth our effort to have it done in our city, as the kind of cheerleader in chief for this clan. I talk about DuPont as the crown jewel of the South Sound, and I firmly believe that. But this done right cements that. This becomes just a tremendous source of economic activity in the region. It already is. We already back way above our weight with the amount of activity that comes out of the city every single year. But it's also a cultural element, and it makes us a very, very desirable place to both live and work. You and I talked about it before, but the original intent was people lived and worked here, and that hasn't come to fruition. The idea that was brought forward over 20 years ago isn't what actually came about. The city really centered around that Intel campus that for a variety of reasons, that didn't create what they thought it was going to do. So this is another opportunity to kind of do that. And obviously, you don't want to put things in here that sit vacant. That's not in anybody's best interest. We're going to have this process, and whether you go out and write a check for this land tomorrow, or you say, I'm not going to do that today, but I'm interested in the process, I invite you or your representative to participate with our planning commission, with the city council, with the citizens. You know, we just did a comp plan, so we're very familiar with how that works. Jeff, you are walking right into this. You know, tag, you're it. Yeah, good. Because it's like art. We don't know what we like, but we'll know it when we see it. And so if your interests were involved in this, at some point in time, you'll either say, yeah, I can work with these people and I can do something that you know, makes sense for me to do from a business standpoint, or they have no idea what they want, or what they want is not workable and I'm not going to do that. But you won't know if you don't participate.
Can I put a little point on the art question then? So one of the economic drivers of the plan that's in front of you is 1.2 million square feet of industrial space, which shows up in sort of the yellowish orange colored buildings on here, right? If this was the art, does anybody, can I get an opinion? I mean, that's the economic driver on this when it was put together 8 or 10 years ago. How does this room feel about that as the economic driver going forward? Excuse me?
No.
Hey, I was asking for honesty, so I appreciate that. I heard someone say no warehouses, and so I wanted to put a point on, to the mayor's point, that we may not know what great art is, but we'll know whether we like it when we see it.
I'm Penny Clark, I'm on the city council, and I've lived in DuPont since about '98, and Beth and I have been through this whole process regarding this property. And a lot of citizens sitting in the audience know what the comp plan was like back in the late '90s, early 2000. This was all supposed to be homes around the golf course. And then when the deed restriction came into place, they flipped all the housing out, you know, that's going to end up in the pit. And I personally really would like to see that dream fulfilled of putting the homes back around this golf course. Everybody has made very good comments here. We have in reality experienced what a 1 million square foot warehouse does. And I was just kind of ballparking it there. I thought that added up to about 1 million square feet of warehouses. And it's had some very big unintended consequences with what we have right now. And I really don't want to see that happen. As you know, this is the most beautiful piece of property around here. You should have been out there when the eclipse of the moon was. I mean, you couldn't have found a more beautiful place to be. And I also, you probably have done your research about the amount of square footage of open office space or business and tech. You understand that State Farm basically is empty. This big, huge building out here by the creek.
We just bought 750,000 square feet of office space a few miles outside.
I know about the warehouse.
Yeah.
But in a 3-mile radius of here, you have the former Intel building, you have the State Farm building. There's a lot of years of build out in existence.
Right.
And another thing I am sensitive about is our downtown area right now is struggling. And we've had a very hard time keeping businesses in there. Lack of patronage and high rents. And so we have, just like everyone said, we have to do this work. And I believe in our comprehensive plan, we talk about the connectivity of the historic sites, the trails, whatnot, to make all of that work for the community. And the traffic around Pioneer Middle School would be horrendous, absolutely horrendous. So I think we really need to seriously consider what goes in here, because as Mike said, I'm comfortable leaving it sit empty right now until it is what we want it to be.
All right, thank you. I really appreciate your comments. You put some thought into what it should and shouldn't be. I appreciate your comments about the office space. And I agree with you. In a perfect world, that would look great with homes all around it. I don't know whether that falls into what it can and can't be, given the restrictions and its prior use and the covenants on the land, but your comment, I really appreciate your comments from a vision. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Renee. I'm on the Planning Commission. Just made it from Seattle. Today. Some of the things that go to the vision are what we put on that property needs to enhance the quality of life for the entire citizens of the city and the people that would work there. And enhance, as I ditto everything that's been said, I think Andy and I pretty much think on the same wavelength. Enhancing the buffers around our open spaces and trails instead of detracting from them. And then the things that could go in there. What does, the 1830 site was a regional hub of commerce in this area back in the 1830s. DuPont, because of its strategic location, can be a regional hub. What are the things that we're lacking that could enhance the city and not detract from the city? We don't have medical clinic or facilities. This may not be the right property, maybe over Patriots Landing, maybe some at both places. Jobs that would enhance the work and live here so that we're not living here and going off to work. I was in Seattle because I was at a final symposium. It would be lovely to have higher education here, not going into our surrounding communities. We do have higher education available, but connectivity of looking in the future and systems dynamics, connectivity to public transportation, and all of these things like the mayor talked about, what's the stresses on the city? Does the system that we're building here enhance the city, pay for those added city services that we're going to provide to this whole city? Does it bring in people that are going to patronize our business district and maybe give other places for the citizens to patronize businesses in this area as well? And definitely maybe relooking the transportation route so it's not by this middle school, but maybe right by here by City Hall, so that we're making this more at the center of the hub of the city. Those kind of ideas, but definitely enhancing the quality of life and livability for the people here, and looking at best practices and emerging practices in urban areas, which also include urban agriculture along the permaculture vein, include landscaping not in foreign species but in more native species, bringing in some of the native prairie that was here. Those kind of things would be incorporated in the vision that carries on the history of this particular place and makes it a viable place economically and a viable quality of life place for the citizens.
Thank you.
Okay, we've got about 12 minutes before the next event. And so what I'd like to do is give up to 7 more minutes for council members or planning commission members that haven't had an opportunity to express their thoughts on wrapping up thoughts you have at the end. I hope this is the beginning of the process and we haven't scared you away. We're a little jealous of our space here, and so you're gonna have to earn the right to build something beautiful here, and that'll be a collaborative process that I think we can embark on together. I think it will be exciting. But those of you that have not had an opportunity to.
Thank you. I'm Councilmember Roger Weston. I look forward to the fundamental adherence to state, county, and local restrictions or influences that apply to that piece of property and the development of that. More particularly, the DuPont Municipal Code should be very much aware of Chapter 25.40, as well as the comp plan for this city. My concern is that those documents provide the guidelines by which development should proceed. And I expect the developer to recognize those and be responsible for their fulfillment. Secondly, the identification of the impacts that any development of that property would have upon our services or residential citizens that we have, as well as the presence of businesses within DuPont, especially with the home courts, the impact upon that court. Thirdly, I think it's very important that we recognize that we are a city that has a history and we expect preservation and participation in the restoration of our historical sites and our sensitive areas by any developer that comes into this area. A fourth area of concern that I have is, of course, upon that sub-area plan, the provisions that would go into that particular plan. So I, along with my fellow council members, if you wish to back away from the possibility, it's okay by me, and I'm sure just leave it as it is until someone else comes up with a creative way, and the mayor alluded on, a creative way by which we all would be happy in fulfillment of these restrictions. I participated, along with my fellow council member Coffey, in putting this document together, the DuPont Municipal Code. We put a tremendous amount of effort, and we expect this document to be respected by any developer. Granted, there's always a possibility of some variation with the sub-area plan. We are just talking off the top of our heads. We do not have a plan in front of us from you, Mr. Developer. We can't say anything definitive, okay? Sure. But the state, local restrictions and comp plan provide the guidance to you and to us.
And my name is Eric Corcoran. I'm on the city council, and I can't really add too much to what everybody's talked about. Pretty much talked about everything that I think we all have on our minds. For me, I think that, other than like people kind of chuckle about a grocery store, I mean, that would be the one thing that everybody always talks about. If you want to know something specific, the grocery store. But my concerns are with the bluff that Andy talked about and Mike talked about. And the infrastructure that we need to have in place before we actually develop a lot of this stuff. Because like Councilmember Borski said, there's going to be some fire emergency, there's going to be some truck traffic, which truck traffic is another thing we're going to be talking about later tonight probably, which is a big issue for people. So like was mentioned about going in off of Grand and going in off of Palisade, they talked about that it's going to be 40 mile per hour around that loop road. So all those things that I think that we're more concerned about how it's going to impact the people who moved here a long time ago, why they moved here, more than what actually goes in there. other than the fact that we do want things that are going to complement what we already have. We wouldn't want to duplicate things. And, so that's my
Hi, Matt Heller, I'm the City Council. So I echo a lot of the comments, not much left for me, that's what I get for going last, but the mayor said we are protective of our space, and I think the way of putting it is probably sensitive. We're a little touchy on this topic right now. Like Councilman LaPorte mentioned, we're going to be discussing the impacts of development on the quality of life of our residents in our regular meeting coming up here in about 5 minutes. So I'm a little loath to say, yes, please, let's do this right now. We don't have any specific feedback to give without a specific plan. And once we see that, I'd love to say, yeah, let's do this the right way. But I can't even really say that without knowing what we're dealing with. So I'm looking forward to seeing what you have for us in the future, because we want to develop it. It's our last bite of the apple with a great piece of property. So we look forward to seeing what you have in the future for us.
I think in fairness, we've challenged Mr. Messner a couple of times, but we haven't brought a plan, but the fairness is we don't have a plan either. We have a blank piece of paper called a sub-area plan. Hard for him to come in and say, I want to develop something here when we haven't told him what the rules are yet. He knows the rules have expired. So this is something we can do together, and that's a unique opportunity, I think. I think instead of being negative about this, I think what we have here is a unique opportunity, something really special. It's got to work. It's got to work for us. It's got to work for him. But if we do that together, at the end of it, it's something that the city is very proud of, that is of an economic benefit to the developer, to the people that live and work here, and at the end of the day, it was a very successful outcome. I think that's what can happen if we do this collaboratively. I would like to give you. Okay.
I just want to say, because there's a lot of people here, and I think that the key part of this is also going to be public input. So when we look at the sub-area plan, we can talk about what we've heard around the city, but the public and their participation in this is actually going to be the biggest help.
I'd like to give you the final comment.
I really appreciate everybody's time and all of the public who showed up here tonight. I'm not sure they came to hear this, but I appreciate that they were here and heard this. We've been successful by swimming in the same direction as the communities that we live in. Where we'd be unsuccessful is if we came in, like I said, and tried to swim cross current. So I didn't come in with a plan specifically because I wanted to understand sort of your latent vision as you see this site over the years and think, and I think you expressed it as clearly as anybody, I would really love to see that be homes, or I would, we've talked about, we would really love to see an events type hotel overlooking one portion of the bluff, or, what would we do if there weren't the covenants and the restrictions, and how many of those could we work through, because again, there's what you can do, what you can't do, and then the what you can do, what you should do, what you shouldn't do, what you want to do, what you don't want to do. So that's really what we were here to hear tonight, because we really are most successful, where, as the mayor said, it's a partnership with the community. So we need to, and I don't go away easily, so, you didn't drive me away tonight. If I went away easily, I would have taken no for an answer from my wife and I wouldn't be married. So I really do appreciate the feedback, and I hope this is the beginning of being able to work with you folks over the next whatever period of time it takes to come to some sort of combined vision on this property. Thank you.
All right. Okay.
And one quick comment, I think to sum up what you would hear from all of us is the development of this property should honor the generations that came before, and then honor our descendants, and be something that, if it works today, it can be adapted to work for succeeding generations, and not just be formed so it works today, and then 20 years down the road is a big mistake.
Okay, now getting on to the administration. Jeff, thank you for coming today. Change some things. You know what you're inheriting. I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. We're going to take a few minutes and reset the room so that we can start off for the council meeting, planning commission, thanks for joining us on this. I think this was very useful, and we'll have more of this kind of stuff in the future. Meeting adjourned.